Shalom lekolam, Shmi Yair, and I am back with another video on language isolates, as you all seem to really enjoy my last video on the subject. As this map shows, there are many language isolates in the world, languages that are not related to any other known language. Although most in this map are now extinct, there are still too many to talk about in this video, so today we'll be discussing 5 more language isolates. Yalla, on y va! The first language we have today is another isolate spoken in Mexico, this time in the state of Oaxaca. This language is Huave or Huabe and is spoken in these 4 towns in southeastern Oaxaca. As of a 2020 survey, the language has approximately 20,000 speakers. The people themselves call their language either one of these 2 names, and this is because there are 2 main dialect groups, Western and Eastern Huave, with each group being further split in twain, totaling at 4 dialects in total. The 4 dialects have their own ISO codes. However, most linguists, including Campbell, agree that Huave is one language. Attempts to classify Huave have led to theories of a link between Mayan, Mixizoquean, or Otomanguean languages. Yet none of these theories have enough proof to definitively classify Huave as belonging to them. However, one interesting study conducted by Müller et al. Used an automated computational analysis and found lexical similarities between Huave and Chitimacha, another language isolate currently being revived that is spoken in, wait for it, Louisiana. It does seem very weird given the distance between the 2 languages, and Müller himself suggests that mutual lexical borrowing is more likely for the similarities. For now, we will assume that Huave remains a language isolate. Here's a table showing Huave's phoneme inventory, including the vowels here. The San Dionisio Sel Mar dialect also features the vowel U. I don't usually go into grammar, but it is worth noting that Huave shares some similarities with Mayan grammar, though not as complex. For example, it is both ergative and consistently head-marking, though not with as many affixes as Mayan languages tend to boast. Reduplication is also common in Huave. Before I conclude this section, let's take a look at an example. Here we have the beginning of Bereshit, or Genesis for Christians, with the translation here for those unfamiliar. This example is from the San Mateo del Mar dialect. If you would like to see an example from the San Dionisio del Mar dialect, then here is the Paternoster prayer. San Mateo is Eastern Huave, whereas San Dionisio is Western Huave. So it should display some lexical differences. It's just a shame I couldn't find the same text for both. Anyway, that's all for Huave, so let's move on out of the Americas for now. The next language on our list today brings us back to India, though far away from where Paroik from our last video is located. The Nihali language is a small language spoken on the border of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, in an area known as Jalgaon Jamod. According to a 2016 survey, the language has 2,500 speakers. However, the language is severely endangered, and most of the speakers are bilingual with Korku, and use Korku in everyday settings. In fact, less than 25% of Nihali vocabulary is actually pure Nihali, as a result of Korku, which makes up 60 to 70% of Nihali vocabulary. The reason for this is that for centuries, the Korku people have effectively been overlords to the Nihali people, forcing them to work on their farms in some sort of system of indentured servitude. Though this is no longer the case, it has left a big impact on the language. Korku, by the way, is actually an Austroasiatic language related to Vietnamese and Cambodian, so it might be a subject for another time because it's very weirdly out of place. Nihali has also been influenced by Dravidian languages and Marathi. Nihali has also been used as a secret language in the past, also by non-Nihali people in the surrounding area. Nihali's classification as a language isolate is due to the sheer amount of vocabulary of unknown origin and different grammar from surrounding languages. It is possible that they are the remnants of a Proto-Indian people that might have existed there even longer than the Tamil. It is also important to note that Nihali is separate from the Kalto language, which is sometimes erroneously called Nahali, leading to confusion. Here are the consonants and vowels for Nihali, which certainly boasts some interesting and unique consonants. And finally, here are some examples for Nihali. I will link a further vocabulary list and a video in the description, but I could not find any solid text, sadly. Needless to say, Nihali is and probably will remain a linguistic mystery. It would be amazing if we could finally get a conclusive answer on where it came from and what languages were related to it, if any. However, for now, we're going to move on to our third language. In our last video, we went to East Africa to talk about a language isolate in Tanganyika. However, there are more isolates in East Africa, such as Chabu, which is spoken in the historical Kaffa region of Ethiopia, including the former capital of the Kingdom of Kaffa, Andaracha. In 2000, the language had 400 speakers. The language is also called Shabo. This is indeed the name that appears on Wikipedia, but I noticed it said that the preferred name is Chabu, as it is the endonym and becoming more popular in recent years. Mikair is also sometimes used, but not by the people themselves. The language was previously classified as Nilo-Saharan by Fleming, but was more recently revised as a language isolate by Blench. A possible link has been suggested with various surrounding languages and language families, such as Koman, Surmic, and Omatic languages, which Chabu shares vocabulary with. However, the more likely explanation is lexical borrowing from mutual contact. Additionally, a link with Cushitic languages has been suggested, though I'll get back to that in a second. First, the consonant inventory for Chabu is as follows, with the vowels above. And to display a snapshot of grammar, here's a table of pronouns in Chabu. I was surprised to see the dual case being a thing, which as a speaker of a Semitic language is definitely a nice surprise. Here is a list of numbers in Chabu, and the reason why some suggest a link with Cushitic languages is due to how similar the Chabu word for one is with the Saho word Inki. Saho is the Cushitic language, and Majang, shown on the table, is a Surmic language. As mentioned before, they share vocabulary but are not necessarily related. Here is also a list of example sentences in Chabu. Once again, I will additionally link a longer list of Chabu vocabulary sourced from Wiktionary. However, for now, that's all I have for Chabu, and we're going to move back to the Americas for our penultimate language. This next language is so isolated, it's spoken on a series of islands, the language in question being Haida, spoken on the Haida Gwaii archipelago off the coast of Cascadia, split between Canada and the United States because of Alaska. Also, I must say the Council of the Haida Nation has an awesome flag. By the way, this map shows the distribution of Haida in pre-Columbian America, not its current extent. Currently, the language has only 13 native speakers. I saw a claim saying 24, but that has no linked citation, and the language is now beginning to enjoy a revitalization/revival movement thanks to the aforementioned Council of the Haida Nation. These are the various endonyms for the language, however they all mean roughly the same thing. The language had previously been classified by Edward Sapir as, you'll never guess, a Na-Dene language. Though not universally accepted, the most likely scenario is that Haida is indeed a language isolate. Historically, there used to be 4 dialects of Haida, however an instance is now extinct due to epidemics brought by Europeans. Surprisingly, the Haida lasted quite a long time relatively unaffected by Europeans due to their isolation. However, assimilation attempts in the late 19th and early 20th centuries led to the language's decline. Across both Canada and the United States, there are just fewer than 10,000 ethnic Haida, compared to 13 native speakers. The Skagate, Kaigani, and Massit dialects still exist. Kaigani is spoken in Alaska, and thus is the focus of the revival movement in the US, whereas Skagate and Massit are being revitalized in Canada. Skadgate Haida is the only remaining southern Haida dialect since the death of Ninstins. Both the northern Haida dialects contain pharyngeal consonants, which are very rare in the world's languages as it is, never mind in the Americas. This has led to some to propose a link with the Cilician languages and the Wakashan languages, which are both spoken in the Cascadia region. However, the Wakashan languages are known to have only acquired them relatively recently in history, and thus it is believed that this is just a feature of mutual contact rather than relation. Taking a look at the consonant inventory of Haida, we can see these pharyngeal consonants, as well as some complex affricates, including the k sound found in Nawat. Here are the vowels, which are agreeably more simple to pronounce. Here is a sample of some simple phrases in Kaigani Haida, spoken in Alaska. I also found this Haida poem with a translation written next to it. It is a poem that was written as part of the revitalization movement, which includes preserving the culture too, not just the language. The Council of the Haida Nations did not specify which dialect this poem is written in. However, that is all for the Haida language. I wish them luck with their revitalization movement. And now let's go back to Africa for our final language. The final language we're going to discuss today is basically spoken in the middle of nowhere, which is most likely why it still survives, albeit barely. This language is Lal, spoken on La République du Tchad in Central Africa, specifically in this region in the south of the country. In 2000, it was recorded that the language had 750 speakers, though this number has likely changed now. The region Lal is spoken in is the Moyen Chari prefecture in just 3 villages, Ngori, Damta and Mailau, although it is worth noting that the Lal people don't actually use these names. Damtar used to have its own distinct dialect, which they called Labe, but in 1977, during the civil war in Chad, Lal speakers from Ngori fled to Damtar, and the Ngori dialect replaced Labe entirely. Ngori is now the only known dialect. The endonym for the language is Yo-La-Al, and as you may have noticed by my butchered pronunciation, the language is tonal, having high, middle and low tones. This is not exactly rare for West and Central African languages, which have created a sort of Sprachbund that has allowed many languages to develop tones, but it's still an interesting feature that cannot go unnoticed. Lal has, like other language isolates in this video, been heavily affected by surrounding languages. One of these languages is Nahali, a Bua language within the proposed Niger-Congo language family. Nahali comprises around 20 to 30% of Lal's vocabulary. For about 400 years, the Sultanate of Bagirmi ruled over the area where Lal is spoken, and the Bagirmi language has inevitably left a lexical impact on the language. Furthermore, influence from various Chadic languages in the Afro-Asiatic language family have also influenced Lal. However, similar to Nihali, a lot of core vocabulary and grammar is completely of unknown origin, and nothing like any languages near it. This has led to the consensus among linguists that Lal is a language isolate and could be the last remnant of a language family once spoken across Central Africa before the Niger-Congo and Afro-Asiatic language families expanded inwards. Anyway, here is the phonology for Lal, and I love that it has this phoneme called a voiced palatal implosive, which is quite rare across the world's languages. Though a few West African languages do indeed have it, such as Fula and Serer. Lal also has a complicated yet intriguing plural system, which seems inconsistent and random, but does indeed follow a pattern, though I imagine it's still difficult to comprehend the exact rules. If you think that's complicated, however, take a look at this table of Lal pronouns. Quite a few, quote, indigenous languages include a distinction between animate and inanimate objects, which I always find fascinating. But what really interests me here is that Lal makes a distinction between inclusive and exclusive we, which is a feature I really love in languages, and I think more languages should adopt this feature, including English. Finally, let's take a look at some samples of lal. First, we have a list of numbers in the language, and secondly, a few example sentences. As I mentioned before, the lal people don't use the quote official names for their villages. Gori is called La in lal. The language is not usually written, and most of the speakers are assumed to be illiterate, so the orthography exists only as a transcription by linguists. It certainly doesn't look like an easy language to learn, but I really do hope that some linguists and anthropologists try to initiate some sort of revitalization project, because it would be such a shame to lose such a beautiful and unique language such as this. That's all for lal, however, so let's conclude this video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of including features of grammar about the languages I spoke about, as this is not something I usually do. But I could not possibly leave them out of the video because they were just too interesting to skip over. If you like the inclusion of grammar, I will continue with it in future videos. Also, I apologize if this video was too long for some viewers, but I had a lot of content to cover and wanted to be able to focus on the languages enough and to not leave out any important features. As this video took me quite a while to make, I would appreciate it if you could show this channel some support. If you are not subscribed already, be sure to turn on notifications and check out my other videos. Feel free to leave a comment below and I will respond. My favorite thing about making these videos is getting to interact with you all and talk about languages. I always end up learning something new from all of you also. However, for now, that's all I have for this video. I once again thank you all for watching, and until next time, להתראות.